Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing The Chalk Man, written by CJ Tudor. It's the author's debut book, was released a few years ago, and it's a great thriller, very dark, very atmospheric. It almost feels paranormal, but it's not a paranormal thriller. But it kind of has these kind of leanings towards paranormal and horror, but just down to how it's written and just the themes going through this story. I really enjoyed this. For a debut book by an author, it's fantastic. It blew me away. It's so gripping, it's chilling. The characters are wonderful. The twists and turns are just amazing. A really great book. This book is split in past and present narrative. It seems almost every thriller I read these days has that split. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why authors choose that path other than just one narrative tense. I'm not sure. But this book has past and present. And in the past narrative, it seems heavily influenced by Stephen King's It. Just the way it plays out, we have this bunch of kids, I think they're early teenagers, or close to it, and they're misfits. They don't fit in at school, but they've formed a kind of a gang amongst themselves. And I think there's 5 of them, and one is a girl. So they've only got one girl, and the rest are boys. And they're all quite different, but they all gel together somewhat. They have issues in the plot later on together, but they just feel like they're misfits. They don't fit in, so it looks a lot like Stephen King's It in this book. Their names are Eddie, Munster Adam, Metal Mickey, Fat Gav, Hippo, and Nikki. And Nikki is the only girl in the group. We learn so much about these kids in the book. In that past narrative, we're just immersed in their lives. We learn all little things about them and big things about them, but it feels so real because they feel real. The things they're going through feel so real. The settings they're in feel very real. So all that combined just makes that past narrative very special in my view. I think it's amazing. You're just transported there and you're forced into their lives. You've got no choice. You have to follow all the things they're going through, and it's described so well. They all feel like kids their age. They don't feel older. So this author hasn't fallen into that trap to make the kids older than they are in the book. Many authors do fall into that trap. Even seasoned authors, but this in a debut book hasn't got that. A great thing in a book like this, to have characters really resemble their ages. So how all this plays out. So they're just kids in their summer holidays and they're looking for things to do. They're getting quite bored actually. There's a new teacher in town, and a teacher has arrived during the holidays, and he somehow connects with a few of the kids. One in particular, the main character, Eddie, connects with him, and he tells him about, when he was a kid, this teacher, when he was a kid, he used to, with his friends, leave chalk messages with each other. Had little symbols, all different things that meant different things. They knew what they meant, but it was a way to communicate in code. So Eddie goes back to his friends and they decide to do that. They have different colored chalks for each person, and they do different symbols. And it just tells them to go, go places, do things, meet me there, meet me here later on, all that sort of thing with these special chalk code drawings they do. But these mysterious chalk drawings start appearing, and they lead these friends to this area in the woods, and they find a dismembered body. And that starts off the mystery that joins the past and present narratives. And I have to say, in the first chapter, early on in the book, we have one character, we don't know who it is. It's a character that's walking through the woods, finds this body, finds the head of the body, picks it up and puts it in a bag and then walks away. That's the first chapter, so it's not really a spoiler. It happens so early on in the book, but it's a great hook. And that hook just propelled me through this story. I was wondering the whole time who that person was. So now the present narrative. So one of the main characters from the past narrative, Ed, and he's our main focus in that past narrative. He's also our main focus in the present narrative. In the present narrative, he's a teacher, still living in the same town, and some of the friends still live there as well. Some moved away. But Ed, he's a kind of a quirky character. He drinks a lot. He seems, he just seems almost lost a bit in his life in the present narrative. I get that sense from him. He's just seems not content with everything. He seems to be kind of floating through life and kind of without an anchor really, without a rudder, I should say. You get that sense from him in the present narrative. But something happens. He receives a mysterious note, and that mysterious note has a chalk drawing. It's a chalk drawing of a hangman, I think, from memory. And he just passes it off as a joke, like somebody's done it as a joke. Doesn't think much of it. Then he finds out other people he knew, so his friends from the past, have also received that note. So that's a chilling factor in the story. What's that note mean? Is it something from the past? Are they being haunted or being stalked by somebody from the past? Has somebody come back to threaten them even? So that kind of plays out in that present day narrative as well. I'm not going to tell you anything more about either narrative, except that in the present narrative, there's a big event that kind of cements the idea that they're in trouble a bit. So in Ed's mind, it cements that idea in his mind. That's all I'm going to tell you. But the book in general, that past narrative for me was brilliant. It just transports you back to a time where things were different. Things seemed not as threatening. These kids could roam around the town, even at night, and ride around on their bikes, do things after dark. And you just imagine that in present day, kids doing the same thing. There'd be all these warnings. Maybe most parents wouldn't even let their kids go out after dark like these kids were doing. So I think in the past narrative, it really brings that kind of open feeling that was there back in the day. The present narrative is still great. Don't get me wrong. It's still a great narrative and it's still gripping and chilling. There are great twists and turns in that narrative, great surprises. It's really well written. And the connections between both past and present are very carefully done. They're eked out through the story. You don't get them all at once. You have to keep going to understand the full picture of both narratives. And I like that. I like the way that's done. So very carefully plotted, very carefully planned. Characters in both narratives are very well done, but for me, the characters in the present narrative are just better. Just better described, better explained, and better developed. In the present narrative, they're still good. They're still great, actually, but not as great as the past narrative. And I'm not a reader who shouts from the rooftops that I like past-present narrative split. I'll never do that. My preference is not to have that split. I don't think you always need it. But in this book, it worked. It worked very well. I just think it's down to the book itself. The tone, the atmosphere, the themes going through there, the characters. When all that works so well in a story, I think that past-present narrative split doesn't matter as much. And I think it can even add elements to the story. So for me, even though it's not my preferred option in a story, that split was done very well in this book. Ed, our main character in both narratives. I preferred past Ed to present Ed, but present Ed is still good. But in past Ed, we get his growth, his development, his coming of age. We see that so clearly, it feels real. His character is developing, it's going through so much in the past narrative. There's many forks in the road, it seems, for Ed in that past narrative. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how it was handled in the story. I enjoyed the way it was developed. I just liked the fact he felt so real. He felt his age. And everything he comes across. It's handled like a teenager will handle it, I thought anyway. So for me, a great character in both narratives. Past Ed does steal the day. Nikki, the only female in this group of friends. In the past narrative, brilliant. And I just love the way she was developed. There are big things going on in the book based on Nikki, based around Nikki. And it was done very well. It drove so many different things in that past narrative, different themes, different feelings and emotions, all centered around that character, and that character felt so real. Everything about her felt real. Everything. So a great character, just well placed in the story, well used in the story as well, and very carefully used, I think, in some of those themes. I really enjoyed the character a lot. Mr. Halloran, this new teacher that comes to town during the holidays and gives these kids the idea of the chalk drawings. He's used so well because he just feels so different in contrast to the rest of the town. And that makes him stand out and makes him feel chilling and sinister sometimes. Also makes him feel just unique and maybe strange sometimes, but not always in a bad way. And just his personality and what he does through his dialogue and actions as well. Sometimes you think, oh, that's odd. That's strange. Not quirky, but very strange. Maybe even, well, what's he doing? You just wonder, what's his character going on about? What's he doing? Is there some secret he's hiding? But then you think, he just feels so innocent sometimes, just so gentle and caring. So he's got different sides to his personality, different sides to himself as a character as well in the story. It comes down to how he's written in the story, how he's viewed by other people. And I enjoyed that in that past narrative especially. So for me, Mr. O'Halloran is just a great character in this story. This book is just amazing. It doesn't feel like a debut book. And it is a debut book, but it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like the author is so controlled in the way it's told. The author is so careful in the way certain things are told in the story. There's no waste in the story. Everything feels real. Everything's so well structured. The twists and turns, surprises, the chill factor, that thrill factor as well. The quirky characters, the sinister characters, the question characters. These characters that come into the story and there's question marks that surround them. All those things in the book outshine everything else, and it's brilliant in my view. I recommend this a lot. On my channel, I review many thrillers. If you enjoy thrillers, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for another book I'm sure you'll enjoy.